We're on lesson 299 in Bible readings. And we're going back. I've been asked to review the chart up here behind me, and we're going to start going a little bit faster through it, but I wanted to get you through the miracles, and we went to the Passover, and then the consecration of the firstborn, every firstborn that would be born in the nation of Israel, whether it's an animal or a human being, that it was God's. And we're coming up now to the crossing of the Sea of Reeds. I did not say Dead Sea, I said, or the Red Sea, I said the Sea of Reeds. The word Sea of Reeds was what was in the original Hebrew. The Septuagint put down there the Red Sea. And the King James Version was made from the Septuagint, not from the Hebrew, and so they made the same mistake, crossing of the Red Sea. And we'll get to that in just a few minutes. In the 13th chapter, in the 17th verse, it says, "Now it came about when Pharaoh had let the people go, that God did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines. Even though it was near, it was the closest route. For God said, lest the people change their minds, and when they see war, they return to Egypt." He wanted them out of Egypt. He had something for them to do. They were going to go in the land of Canaan. And then hence God led the people around by the way of the wilderness to the reeds, to the Sea of Reeds. Now, the Sea of Reeds here, now people object to this because of King James so many times. If it's in King James, it's got to be inspired, which it isn't. The King James is a very biased Bible, even though I know you may hear that and say, oh, that's terrible, that's blasphemy. King James is a translation. King James was a translation for the Church of England. The Church of England believed in baby baptism, pedobaptism, and they believed in baptism by sprinkling. And they believed in baptismal regeneration. So all of those things are infiltrated into the King James Bible. Baptized for the remission of sins instead of baptized because of the remission of sins. And baptized there, they said, well, if we were put the word immerse in there, they're going to say the Baptists are right. So, well, don't put it immerse, just put down baptized, and they won't know any better. It was not Rontizo sprinkling, it was not nipto pouring, but it was immersion that John the Baptist and Jesus' disciples, his church, used to form for baptism. And baptism wasn't by sprinkling back then. Baptism was a long-ordered thing. They went out and they baptized the animals before they sacrificed them in the baptismal pools around Jerusalem, and they baptized every person that went in there so that he would be cleansed. Every person was baptized, basically. Every adult was baptized by immersion before he was circumcised if he became a convert, a proselyte. Baptism was an old form. Every month a woman was baptized when her body was rejuvenated after it was finished. Then they would take her and baptize her 12 times, one time for each tribe of Israel. And so now in the Sea of Reeds, the Sea of Reeds is a more shallow area where they want to cross. Let me ask you something. If they went through the Red Sea, it would be easy to drown them. And they said, well, that's the reason why that, they can't say they went through the Sea of Reeds, even though that's what the original Bible says, because it was shallower. Well, God can drown a person in a cup of water. But the problem with the Sea of Reeds is it was like quicksand at the bottom. Like quicksand. And that would stop the chariot wheels very easy, even though maybe it was only 6 foot over their head. Now let's go back and look and see what it says here. God led them around by the Sea of Reeds, and the sons of Israel went up in a martial array like armies out of Egypt. And Moses took the bones of Joseph. Now it doesn't say this here, but Moses took the bones of Joseph, and he took the bones of all of the patriarchs, all of Joseph's brothers. Every one of them died in Egypt. They embalmed them and put them in a coffin. And when they went into the land of Canaan, or Canaan, the promised land, they took their coffins and buried them in their prospective lands that they were supposed to have. For he had made the sons of Israel solemnly swear, saying, God shall surely take care of you, and you shall carry my bones out from here with you. And not only his, but all the others. The book of Jasher tells you that. And they set out from Succoth, and they camped in Ethan on the edge of the wilderness. And the Lord was going before them in a pillar and a cloud by day, and led them in a pillar of fire by night, and to give them light, and they might travel by day and by night. They followed the cloud in the daytime and the fire at nighttime. And by the way, the cloud also gave them shade, and the fire gave them warmth, because they were going to camp around the fire in prospective ways, and from that fire came warmth. And he did not take away the pillar of the cloud by day, nor the pillar of fire by night from before the people. Now back to Pharaoh. Now the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Tell the sons of Israel to turn back and camp before Pi-haneroth, between Migdol and the sea. And you shall camp in front of Baal-Zephon, opposite by the sea, the land of typhoons. Actually what it says. And Pharaoh will say of the sons of Israel that they are wandering aimlessly in the land, and the wilderness has shut them in. And I will go harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will chase after them, and I will be honored through Pharaoh and all of his army. And the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. And they did so. Then the king of Egypt was told that the people had died, or fled, that is. And Pharaoh and his servants had a change of heart. God worked on the servants too now, toward the people, and they said, What is this that we have done, that we have let Israel go from serving us? We have turned all of our slaves loose. We'll have to work ourselves now. So they made his chariot ready, and they took his people with him. And he took 600 select chariots and other chariots of Egypt with officers, all of them. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. And he chased after the sons of Israel as the sons of Israel were going out boldly. Then the Egyptians chased after them with all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh and his horsemen and his army, and they overtook them by the sea, beside Pi-hahiroth, in the front of Baal-Zephon. And Pharaoh drew near, the sons of Israel looked, and behold, the Egyptians were marching after them, and they became very frightened, so that the sons of Israel cried out to the Lord. And they said to Moses, Is it because there were no graves in Egypt that he hath taken us out and to die in this wilderness? Why have you dealt with us in this way, bringing us out of Egypt? We want to go back home. We want to go home already. They want to go back and be slaves. Is this not the word that we spoke to you in Egypt, saying, Leave us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in this wilderness. Now the sea. But Moses said to the people, Do not fear. Stand by and see the salvation of the Lord, which he has accomplished for you all this day. For the Egyptians whom you have seen today, you will never see again, forever. The Lord will fight for you while you keep silent. Then the Lord said to Moses, Why are you crying out to me? Tell the sons of Israel to go forward. And as for you, lift up your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it. We're talking about a sea full of reeds. A marsh type area, except it's deep enough. It's probably 10 or 12 feet deep anyway. And at the bottom of it, it's like quicksand. Now he's going to hold his staff out over this sea of reeds, and he's going to divide it. And he's going to take out all of the trashy reeds, and he's going to harden the ground so it will be like quicksand for them. Lift up your staff, stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it. For the sons of Israel shall go through the midst of the sea on dry land. Not quicksand now, dry land. And as for me, behold, I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, so that they go after them again, and I will be honored through Pharaoh and all his army, through his chariots and his horsemen. Then the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord, whom I have honored through the Pharaoh and through the chariots and his horsemen. And the angel of God, who had been going before the camp, the angel of God, the one going before the camp, is the Shekinah glory of God, moved and went behind them. And the pillar and cloud moved before them, and they stood behind them. Now the angel of the Lord in the Shekinah glory had been leading them. Now another angel, the angel of his presence, or whatever you want to call it, went behind them to guard the rear flank. And so it came between the camp of Egypt and the camp of Israel. There was a cloud along the darkness, and yet it gave light at night, and the one did not come near, and the other all night. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord swept the sea back by a strong east wind all night. And he turned the sea into dry land. And so the waters were divided. Now the sea, the waters in that sea, now we have all of this marsh type land, this sea of reeds. We have all these reeds ripped up and pushed into a wall on both sides, and the walls stand up like gelatin. That's what it basically says in the Hebrew. Stand up, it congeals like gelatin. And the sons of Israel went through the midst of the sea on dry land, and the waters were like a wall to them on the right hand and on the left. They had congealed. They were like jello standing there. Then the Egyptians took up the pursuit, and the Pharaoh's horses and his chariots and his horsemen went in after them into the sea of reeds. And it came about in the morning, watch, that the Lord looked down on the army of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and the cloud, and brought the army of the Egyptians into confusion. And it caused their chariot wheels to swerve and made them drive difficultly. The land is turning back into dry ground, is turning back into quicksand. It's turning into quicksand. So the Egyptians said, "Let us flee from Israel, for the Lord is fighting for them against the Egyptians." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea, so that the waters may come back over the Egyptians and over their chariots and over their horsemen." So Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its normal state in daybreak, at the daybreak. And while the Egyptians were fleeing right into it, the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. Now he's going to drown them all. All the water and all the reeds and all the muck is going to go over them. And the waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen, even Pharaoh's entire army that had gone into the sea after them. Not even one of them remained. And the sons of Israel walked on dry land through the midst of the sea, and the waters were like a wall to them on the right hand and on the left. And thus the Lord saved Israel from that day on, from the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. They washed up on the seashore dead. And when Israel saw the great power which the Lord had used against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord, and they believed in the Lord and in his servant Moses. They believed in the Lord and in his servant Moses. They had to be convinced every time anything happened. They had to be convinced. I was up at Lake Success, up by Porterville, California. I was up there fishing at night time by myself. I'd gone up there and was going to go out up into this cove. And the lake was receding that day. They were letting the water out of the lake. And I took off where I'd only been there that morning. And I got there after dark. I launched the boat at probably midnight or something. And I was out there and I was going up that, I had a light on the front of my boat. It was a 14-foot sport line boat. I had a 50 horsepower outboard engine on it. And I was planing up through there and going up through this thing. I hadn't gone in there very far in this cove, and all of a sudden the boat just stopped in the mud and in the weeds. And I was stuck there. And I had to get out in that mud. Yeah, get out there, and I had my overalls on, and I had to take my shoes off. And I had to get out there in that mud and push that boat back probably 10 or 15, 20 feet. I had kind of beached it there where there wasn't a beach the day before. It was all water. When I did that, I thought about the chariot wheels going through the sea of reeds, and how that their wheels were stuck in this quicksand, and it was going up to my knees and that stuff, and I was pushing and pulling myself up out of the water, pulling myself out of the mud and pushing the boat a little further. And that went on for about 2 hours. I was worn out. I finally got out there where the boat was floating again. And then it was extremely difficult to get in the boat. I didn't think I was ever going to get in the boat. Here I was out on the water now, in the open water, and I couldn't get back in my boat. I finally got in the boat. And I thought all the time of how the water went back, and as the Egyptians were down in the sea of reeds, how that the ground, the soil underneath their feet was turning back into quicksand. It had been hard ground all the way, and this is quite a miracle now. This is a real tremendous miracle. This is like the 12th miracle. When their staffs turned into these leviathans, the dragons, and now we have the parting of the sea of reeds. What's harder now? A lot of people just don't want to see the sea of reeds. One thing, it contradicts the King James Version, which is supposed to be from the original tongues, but it didn't tell you that it was a translation from the original languages to begin with. The Septuagint is. And Septuagint made the mistake of calling it the Sea of Reeds instead of calling it the Red Sea instead of the Sea of Reeds. That mud was quicksand down there. It was quicksand. And I know what that is. I've been quicksand. You get in there and you can't get out. I had a time pulling myself up out of that. I guess out there where that cove was, I don't know how long the water had been in there, but it went way back up in there that morning, and then I go out there and I'm not 1/4 of the way in there, and the water has been let down so much that day that the cove wasn't there anymore. When I got out into that quicksand, sinking down to my knees and pushing on the boat and then pulling myself up out, using the boat again, then getting out there in open water to where I could go, boy, it was something else. I had to pull my overalls off and everything else before I could get back in that boat. I couldn't take any extra weight to get in there. I was exhausted. And the Lord watched over me one more time, which I should have been gone down, drowned. Pharaoh's people drowned. They drowned. God got glory over them in crossing the Sea of Reeds and drowning all of them, and bringing Israel through the quicksand, the miry clay of life. God does that for us every day. How many times has He brought you through the miry clay and the quicksand in life? How many times has He done that for you? He's always there. He's always got His angels around you. You might not have worn them out like I did, but they're there for you too. Thousands of guardian angels. Thousands of spirits to comfort you. Our Father, we send this message out for your honor and glory. Please use it. Glorify yourself with it. And please convict sinners of sin, righteousness, and judgment to come. And those that are yours, that you'll give them confidence to walk through life, through the hard times and the difficulties. In Jesus' name we